presenting a packaged PowerPoint reviewing a communication studies theory called Computer-Mediated Communication, or CMC for short. Like all forms of communication, this requires a sender, a receiver, a channel, and a message. CMC focuses on communication that utilizes technology as the channel to send its message. To give a formal definition, CMC is any form of communication between two or more individuals who interact and influence each other via separate devices using the internet or network connection. While this image of two computers communicating is adorable, it doesn't exactly portray what CMC really is. Computer-mediated communication is not how computers communicate with each other, but rather how individuals utilize and exploit computers to communicate with one another. Two critical components identified by researchers of CMC are a lack of nonverbal cues, often referred to as cues filtered out, and extended time. These components of CMC are what differentiate CMC and face-to-face conversation, or FTF for short. Since nonverbal cues are eliminated in text-based CMC, research originally pointed to CMC being far more impersonal and lean medium than FTF. Extended time refers to asynchronous CMC and an individual's ability to edit and carefully craft their message without the immediacy of FTF. CMC covers a wide breadth of potential research topics. To provide a framework for this presentation, I will focus on three areas that communication theorists have explored in order to explain the social and communicative influence of CMC. These three areas are relational aspects, paralinguistic features, and self-disclosure levels. Some of the earliest research of CMC comes from communication theorist Joseph Walther, who sought to explore CMC's effect on interpersonal relationships. Walther concluded that CMC is a crucial aspect in the management of interpersonal relationships and leads to impression formation. His research showed that CMC may promote positive relational effects in ways that previous theories have not considered, and in some ways superior to more traditional media. His later work looked to analyze how relationships grow via CMC and how impressions are formed. Walther's social information processing theory claims that relationships grow only to the extent that parties first gain information about one another and how they use it to form interpersonal impressions. Impression formation is defined as the composite mental image one person forms of another. Walther describes the differences of impression formation in CMC versus FTF by using the metaphor a sip instead of a gulp. Not only is this a clever play on the abbreviation of social information processing, but does well to illustrate how CMC-based impressions are formed bit by bit, like little sips, rather than a whole lot at once, like the gulp of FTF impression formation. While Walther's research focused on interpersonal and relational effects of CMC, another communication researcher, Marta Gonzalez, explored the paralinguistic features present in CMC and how they compare to FTF. In a study of conversation analysis cases on CMC, Gonzalez found that the sequential organization of CMC differs greatly from FTF. Specifically, she concluded that the sequence of CMC is much more chaotic than FTF, partly due to the lack of adjacency pairs. In FTF, turns that appear next to each other are considered adjacency pairs, and the floor to speak belongs to just one person at a time. In CMC, however, the turn-taking system is limited by the medium. The length of the turn to speak depends on the network strength, typing speed, among other variables. Sequential organization and turn-taking are also influenced by the type of CMC. CMC can be classified as synchronous or asynchronous. Synchronous refers to communication happening at the same time, like instant messaging or video chat. Asynchronous communication occurs with a delay between interactions, like email. Turn-taking and sequence organization in asynchronous CMC more closely mirrors FTF than synchronous CMC. In synchronous CMC, the sequence is more hectic and less structured, as senders cannot be sure of the exact placement of their message in the bigger scope of the interaction. The sequence becomes even less structured when more participants are involved in the interaction. CMC is often associated with learning or teaching a second language, as it allows language students to practice with a native speaker. In this setting, synchronous CMC is utilized so that L2 learners are able to have immediate interaction and response with L1 learners. Using CMC to connect L2 learners to L2 speakers, L2 learners to L1 speakers provides a more authentic experience than in-class and textual studies. Another area of research regarding CMC deals with the difference in self-disclosure between CMC and FTF. In a meta-analysis of studies comparing levels of self-disclosure between CMC and FTF, theorist Aaron Rappel found that, in general, self-disclosure levels are higher in FTF than in CMC. This conclusion stated more specifically that the depth of self-disclosure is significantly different between CMC and FTF, while the breadth of self-disclosure is more similar. Essentially, senders may disclose on a similar range of topics in both CMC and FTF, but disclose on a deeper level in FTF. Rappel also found that there was a significant difference in the levels of disclosure between video and text-based CMC, with more disclosure apparent in video-based mediums. Levels of disclosure are influenced by three main factors. These three factors are synchronicity, whether or not the interaction is in real time; persistence, which is the amount an interaction is able to be recorded. So for instance, an instant message might disappear once the conversation log is closed, but an email is stored for a while. And anonymity, the amount that an individual's identity is protected. While the communication researchers who originally began studies on CMC provided invaluable information for the groundwork of the theory, their findings are limited in application to contemporary context. The reason for this limitation comes from the shortcomings in the experimental design of previous research, as well as its inability to predict future events. To critique the experimental design of previous CMC studies, it has to be noted that previous research has examined the impact of single modal CMC, meaning exclusively text, video, or audio, etc. The research is limited in this aspect as it does not address how multimodal mediums of CMC impact communication satisfaction. Research is also limited as it deals with how CMC impacts individuals within an organization and is yet to explore individuals using CMC mediums as a means for social networking. The experimental design also falls short in most cases as it fails to distinguish between pre-existing and zero history relationships. As an objective theory, CMC should make some prediction of the future events on the subject. CMC research is limited in this aspect as technological capabilities and internet access have greatly increased since the inception of the theory. To begin to address these shortcomings and to adapt the theory to better suit a contemporary context, it is important to understand the current landscape of CMC. With technological progressions in cell phones, an entirely new language has been forged. The introductions of emoticons has revolutionized CMC, allowing for a multimodal medium of expression featuring text and icons. Matt Britton, an author who studies youth culture, lays out the impact of emoticons.
As platforms like Snapchat continue to grow in popularity and as young people continue to communicate with one another in sort of rapid hyper form, emojis continue to grow in popularity as a way to communicate emotions in a way that words never can. It's quicker, it's easier, it's more fun of a way to communicate, and young people are growing up as it being a really central language to the way in which they communicate, and we don't see them losing this language anytime soon. It's not going to become as important as English per se, but we think emojis is going to stay, and it's going to be a big part of our culture moving forward.
Messaging applications like Snapchat allow for users to combine mediums to communicate with one another in asynchronous fashion. According to the Business Collective Online, it is a medium that enables users to send highly personalized and private messages to each other through an efficient, objective-oriented real-time communication protocol. It also breaks the rules of social conversation and sharing that were previously defined by the reality of permanency and inherent loss of control over where your posts and messages could end up. The multimodality of this app allows for more personal interaction and communication satisfaction. To extend the findings of CMC to a contemporary context, additional structures are needed to address the shortcomings of the previous research. In my extension, I focused on three structures that apply to a modern context. The first structure addresses the effect of multimodality on a CMC medium's richness and its ability to produce satisfactory interactions. With the introduction of multimodal channels, CMC allows for greater expression by combining sounds, text, and images, which in turn increases the richness of a medium. This increased richness results in a greater communication satisfaction. The second structure addresses how the level of synchronicity of a medium relates to communication satisfaction in pre-existing and zero-history relationships. As more users are engaging in CMC as a means of social networking, asynchronous mediums of CMC are being more utilized as the preferred method of information seeking. With this additional structure, it can be stated that asynchronous CMC mediums produce the best results for social networking in zero-history relationships as they allow for users to carefully craft messages in order to form impressions and save face. For pre-existing relationships, synchronous CMC mediums may be preferred as they allow for immediate feedback and bypass the limitations of asynchronous CMC like network connection strength and typing speed. The third structure in this extension of CMC theory addresses how self-disclosure varies between task and relational-oriented interactions. Prior research examined differences in disclosure levels between CMC and FTF and between different mediums of CMC, but did not address how disclosure levels vary based on the purpose of the interaction. This added structure is also related to the growing number of social networkers engaging in CMC. In a contemporary context, self-disclosure levels ought to be greater in relation-oriented interactions than in task-oriented interaction. To summarize, CMC is any form of communication between two or more individuals who interact and influence each other via separate devices using the internet or network connection. Researchers of CMC focus on a wide range of implications such as relational aspects, paralinguistic features, and varying levels of self-disclosure. Criticism of the theory is drawn from shortcomings in experimental design and predictability of future events. To extend the theory to a contemporary context where multimodality in CMC has shaped the way we communicate, 3 new structures were introduced. They involved multimodality enriching mediums, synchronicity in existing zero-history relationships, and self-disclosure differences in task and relational-oriented interactions.